She stood there, her hand trembling, as the last piece of my shattered laptop slid across the floor. "You're just a parasite," my mother-in-law hissed, with the entire family watching, and no one said a word. I didn't fight back. I didn't even blink. I smiled. 2 months later, she opened her mailbox and found the one thing she never expected, a 30-day eviction notice. It was still her house, until it wasn't, because I had bought it, quietly, legally, completely. And no one, absolutely no one, saw it coming. I married into perfection, or at least that's what I told myself. Mark was everything a girl could ask for: kind, successful, attentive. His family welcomed me with open arms, at least on the surface. His mother, Linda, hosted a garden brunch the week after our wedding. Her friends sipped champagne and whispered how lucky I was. She even gave me a framed portrait titled "Our Forever Family." It hung in the center of their immaculate living room just above the fireplace, glowing in gold trim like a shrine. Linda smiled a lot in those days. She'd ask about my little online thing when referring to the business I'd built from scratch. I told her I was developing an educational app for women in underserved communities. She nodded like she cared. "That's cute," she said. "At least you're keeping busy." I moved into their home temporarily while Mark and I searched for our own place. 6 months max, we had agreed. But as the weeks passed, the atmosphere shifted. Linda began tapping on my door without knocking. Sometimes she'd ask me to help with dinner, right in the middle of my work calls. Other times she'd enter while I was out and tidy up my desk. I should have paid more attention to the signs: the laptop that started overheating, the project files that went missing, the passwords that needed resetting. I thought I was being paranoid. I thought surely no one would sabotage my business from within their own family. I was wrong. One morning, I caught her standing over my open laptop, eyes scanning my inbox. She didn't flinch when I entered. "You should be more careful with your things," she said, closing the screen like she was doing me a favor. "A real wife doesn't need secrets." Mark wasn't home. Neither was his sister, just the two of us, and the silence that thickened like fog. I didn't react. I watched her walk away. That evening during dinner, she brought it up again, this time in front of everyone. "Emma's been playing boss lady on her little computer again," she said, sipping wine. "I told her, sweetie, men don't marry ambition. They marry peace." Laughter. Not from Mark, but from his sister. His father didn't say a word. Mark cleared his throat, but said nothing. I felt heat rise in my chest, but my face stayed calm. Later that night, it happened. I was sitting in the den, finalizing a pitch deck for a major investor meeting. Linda entered unannounced. "Still pretending to be important?" she said. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. "You live under this roof, you eat our food, and you play pretend with your business. That's not a career. That's a fantasy. And you—" She snatched my laptop from the coffee table. "You don't belong here." She slammed it to the hardwood floor. The screen cracked on impact, a jarring sound followed by collective silence. The rest of the family, drawn by the noise, stood frozen in the hallway. Mark said nothing. No one moved. I looked down at the shattered device, then back up at Linda. She stared at me like she'd won something. "You're not part of this family," she said. "You never were." I nodded slowly. Then I walked upstairs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up my backup drive, packed a small bag, and left the house that night. I told Mark I needed space. He mumbled something about not making things worse. I didn't reply. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had been recording everything, every comment, every invasion of privacy, every whispered insult. I had been documenting the emotional warfare in silence, hidden apps, encrypted backups, video from a small camera clipped inside my bookshelf. I had the proof. I just needed the strategy, and I had one. Because while Linda thought I was a joke with a toy laptop, I had been negotiating with a venture capital firm for months. I wasn't just building an app, I was launching a company, the kind that gets seed funding in the 6 figures. the kind that gives you power and privacy. My lawyer had warned me early on, protect yourself, especially if you're living in a home you don't own. So I did. When I left that night, I didn't just walk away, I walked toward leverage. The next day, I met with my attorney. I asked for one specific document, the property history and ownership status of Linda's house. I needed to know everything, deeds, loans, outstanding liens. I wanted to understand how vulnerable she really was. He looked at me, curious. Are you thinking of suing? I smiled. No, I said. I'm thinking of buying. I returned to the house 3 days later with a suitcase and a smile. I'm sorry, I said, standing at the threshold like an unwanted guest. You were right. I've been too proud. Linda raised an eyebrow, surprised but satisfied. Mark didn't even come downstairs. Only his sister hovered in the background, her phone in hand, clearly waiting to see if I'd break again. I think it's best I move out, I said. No more tension. Linda tilted her head, almost maternal. That's very mature of you. I nodded. I'll be out by the weekend. She smiled, genuinely, and for the first time in months, I saw her relax. She thought she'd won, that I had surrendered, that I was walking away in shame. Good. That weekend, I made a performance out of packing. I even let Linda suggest where I should donate some of those extra clothes you won't need anymore. I thanked her. In silence, I watched her walk through the house like a queen reclaiming her throne. I made sure to glance up at the gold-framed family portrait one last time. It was still hanging in the center of the room, unbothered, but a crack had formed on the glass, barely visible. A thin, splintering line across Mark's face. A sign. The first fracture. What Linda didn't know was that the night she shattered my laptop, I had driven straight to a notary and signed a contract. I bought the house she lived in. Technically, it wasn't hers. Her late husband had left it to his business trust, and after years of refinancing and poor investment choices, Linda was behind on property taxes and mortgage payments. The house was already in pre-foreclosure. My lawyer found the window. I climbed through it. Legally, of course. I created a shell company, Emma Holdings, LLC. Clean, quiet, untraceable. I acquired the deed through an intermediary buyer within 48 hours. Linda never knew, until the envelope arrived. It came by certified mail delivered directly into her hands. She opened it with the same smug confidence she carried when she smashed my laptop. I watched from across the room, first confusion, then horror. Her lips moved silently as she reread the first line. This is a mistake, she stammered. Mark appeared behind her, still groggy from sleep. What's going on? She shoved the paper into his hands. He read, then blinked. This says you have to vacate the house in 30 days. It's a joke, she snapped. Someone is messing with us. Mark kept reading, his jaw clenched. This came from Emma Holdings, LLC. Linda turned to me, eyes wide. What the hell did you do? I raised my coffee cup. I moved on. She lunged toward me, her hand outstretched like she was ready to claw at my face, but Mark grabbed her arm. Don't. Her body trembled. You think this makes you powerful? You think you've won? I stood. No, I just think you should find a new place to live. I walked past her, slow and calm, the way she used to walk past me when I was invisible in her kitchen. Later that day, Mark's younger brother, Adam, called me. I heard, he said. I waited. She deserved it. I raised an eyebrow. You're not mad? He laughed. You kidding? I've wanted someone to shut her up since I was 13. We met for coffee that week. He told me about his own exile, how Linda had driven his girlfriend away, how she threatened to cut him off unless he moved back home. He refused. She stopped speaking to him. We weren't allies before, but we were now. I told him the whole plan, carefully, of course, enough to bring him into the fold. He looked at me with genuine admiration. You played her better than anyone ever has. No, I said. I let her play herself. Over the next few days, the cracks in the family widened. Linda called everyone, screaming, pleading, accusing. Mark was caught between us, but his silence became its own betrayal. The house was mine, legally, irrevocably. One evening, I passed the living room and saw her standing alone, staring at the family portrait. The crack on the glass had deepened. A jagged vein ran across her face now. She reached out to touch it. The glass fractured. It splintered under her fingers. She gasped, then backed away as if she'd been burned. I didn't say a word. I just kept walking. 30 days, that's all she had, and she knew it. There's a cost to control, one I learned long before Linda ever threw that laptop. Years ago, I was engaged to someone else. His name was Daniel. We were 2 weeks away from signing our first business lease together. My first startup, small but promising, was about to go live. He said all the right things. We're partners. We'll build this life together. You're brilliant. But the day I transferred funds into our shared account, he disappeared. With everything. He emptied the account. He ghosted me. Vanished from my life like a chapter never written. That was the first time I lost everything. That was the day I stopped trusting words and started building walls. So when Linda made me invisible, when she tried to humiliate me, I didn't react because I already knew what betrayal tasted like. I didn't panic when she screamed because I had already screamed myself hoarse in an empty apartment years ago. This time, I would not lose. Not unless it was on my own terms. But what I didn't account for was her playing the long game too. I underestimated her hunger for power. After the eviction notice went public, Linda flipped the narrative with terrifying precision. She scheduled an interview on a local talk show, crying, shaking, telling viewers how her daughter-in-law had manipulated her into selling her home. She's a tech manipulator, she said, used shell companies to steal my house. The host nodded with practiced sympathy. You're saying this wasn't voluntary? I trusted her, Linda whispered, tears poised on command. She preyed on my family. The segment aired 3 days later. The response was instant. Headlines rolled out. Daughter-in-law evicts elderly widow in power grab. Comments flooded in. She's a snake. Typical millennial entitlement. What a monster. People dug up my app. Review bombed it. Bloggers called for boycotts. Twitter exploded. I tried to ignore it. Told myself the truth would hold. But truth doesn't trend. One afternoon, I walked into my office and found my lead investor waiting. No greeting, just a document folder on the table. We're out, he said. Because of the headlines? Because you didn't tell us who you were up against. I blinked. She's not just anything. She's the mother-in-law from hell with a media strategy. She made you the villain, and right now no one wants to back a villain. I watched him leave. Just like Daniel had. Just like everyone eventually did. The next day, my company's account froze. Users dropped. Clients pulled contracts. Everything I'd rebuilt after Daniel, the late nights, the code, the pitch decks, the funding, gone in 72 hours. Linda had swung, and this time, she hit harder than I thought she could. At home, Mark avoided eye contact. The silence between us thickened until it cracked. I think we need to talk, he said one evening, avoiding my gaze. I waited. I want a divorce. No drama, no explanation, just those 4 syllables spoken like a weather report. I nodded. He paused. And I want half. I turned slowly. Half of what? Whatever you have. The app, the accounts, the new house. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You didn't help build a damn thing, I said. His face twitched. You used my family's connections. I stood. I used your silence. He moved out that night. By the weekend, the house was empty. Even Adam disappeared. His number changed, emails bouncing back. Maybe he got scared. Maybe Linda bought his loyalty back. I was alone again. But this time, there was no startup to distract me. No Daniel to blame. No Mark to disappoint. Just me. Me, a silent house, and a mirror with my reflection in it, hollow, flickering. I sat in the living room, eyes on the cracked glass of that same golden family portrait. No one had removed it. No one had dared to fix it. The glass looked worse now. It wasn't just cracked. It was caving in. So was I. I thought I had mastered the con, that I had orchestrated every note, every move. But even puppeteers lose strings. Then came the final blow. A letter. Another certified envelope, this time addressed to me. Inside, legal papers, a formal lawsuit. Linda was suing me for fraudulent acquisition of property. She accused me of manipulation, elder abuse, coercion, and financial deceit. And she had an attorney, a damn good one, a media-hungry one. I read the complaint twice. My hands didn't shake, but my stomach turned. I had played her like a queen, but she had flipped the board. I had pushed too far, too fast, and now I was being pulled into a courtroom battle I might not win. Not because I was wrong, but because perception had become reality. And in their reality, I was the villain now. They say you hit bottom before you rise, but I didn't rise. I burned. And from that fire, I rewrote the rules. The court date loomed, media vultures circled, and Linda soaked in the spotlight. She had spun herself into a fragile victim, weeping in pearls, while I was the cold-hearted villain with a laptop and a vendetta. What no one knew, what no one could have guessed, was that I no longer owned the house she was fighting me over. I had already given it away. Before the investor walked out, before the reviews dropped, before Mark even asked for the divorce, I had quietly transferred ownership of the property to a nonprofit trust I created, Phoenix Haven Foundation. On paper, I no longer held the deed, but I directed the trust, and its mission was clear: provide transitional housing for women leaving emotionally abusive households. I didn't need revenge. I needed redemption. Not for me, but for every woman who had been called crazy, dramatic, overreacting, for every Emma who was told she didn't belong. Linda was suing a ghost. Her lawsuit couldn't touch me. It was like throwing punches at smoke. I let her keep swinging because I had one more card. I sent a letter to the court with full documentation. The property had been transferred months ago, legally, with notarized paperwork. There was no fraud, no manipulation. The house no longer belonged to either of us. It belonged to every woman Linda would have sneered at in public, then belittled in private. And just when I thought the story had played out, the universe gifted me something unexpected. Photos, anonymous, slipped into my inbox under a blank subject line. Photos of Mark, naked, drunk, wrapping himself around a woman I recognized immediately, Vanessa, my oldest friend, the same woman who cried at my wedding, who held my veil while I walked down the aisle, the one who said, "He's perfect for you," when I introduced them. I stared at the images, not with rage, but with clarity. Linda hadn't raised a son. She had cloned herself, and Mark had never chosen me. He had tolerated me quietly, the way men inherit manners. I sent one photo to Linda. No message, no context, just the image. She called within minutes. "You did this," she spat. "No," I said. "You raised this." Silence. I took a breath. "You know," I added, "losing the house wasn't the worst thing for you." She scoffed. "What you really feared," I said slowly, "was losing your audience." That landed. The phone call ended there. But the consequences kept coming. Mark's affair hit the press. Vanessa was married to someone wealthier and louder than Mark. Scandal followed scandal. Investors pulled out of his firm. Clients walked. Vanessa's husband sued for divorce, naming Mark in the filing. Suddenly, Linda's golden sun wasn't so golden. Her image cracked, just like that family portrait once did. And one by one, the people who had once stood behind her took a step back. The social clubs, the church ladies, even her daughter, who had smiled when my laptop shattered, now refused to speak publicly on her behalf. Within weeks, Linda was alone in that house, until she wasn't, because the trust delivered its final notice. She had 60 days to vacate. A team arrived with paperwork, prepaid movers, even a social worker to help her transition. She screamed at them, then slammed the door. But we both knew it was over. I didn't show up. I didn't need to. I had already won. The day Linda moved out, the mirror in her bedroom, an antique she claimed came from France, fell from its hook. The housekeeper said it didn't break cleanly. It shattered, every piece sharp, every reflection gone. I don't believe in omens, but I believe in poetry. 2 months later, I sat backstage at a financial leadership conference in Chicago. I was the closing speaker. Not for my startup, though some still whispered about it, but for what came after. Phoenix Haven now operated 4 properties across the state. We had placed over 70 women into temporary housing. Some of them came from homes just like Linda's. Some of them had never even realized they were victims until someone finally named it. I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warming my skin. The audience applauded. I waited for them to settle. Then I said, "Let me tell you a story." Power doesn't feel like a crown. It feels like silence, the kind that fills a hotel room at 2 a.m. after the applause fades and the champagne glasses are cleared. It feels like opening your inbox and seeing 100 subject lines praising you, but none asking how you're doing. It feels like winning and feeling nothing. After the conference, Phoenix Haven received an influx of donations. I shook hands with CEOs. I posed with politicians. I signed books I didn't write. The media labeled me a pioneer, a survivor, a woman who rose from ashes. They loved the narrative, loved how neatly it wrapped. Betrayed, broken, rebuilt. They never asked who got burned along the way. Adam did. He had been quiet since Linda's lawsuit collapsed, but I assumed he just needed space. I thought maybe he was finding peace now that she no longer controlled the narrative. I didn't know he was still under her shadow. I found out the way everyone finds out these days, through a headline. Real estate fraud probe expands to brother of plaintiff's ex-husband. My stomach dropped. I clicked, scanned. Adam's name. Linda's accusation. The claim that Adam had conspired with me to coerce her into signing over the house. It was fiction, but convincing. There were old text messages, ones he sent me when he was furious at his mother. She deserves this. Glad you're putting her in her place. She's getting what she's earned. Out of context, they looked malicious. Combined with his sudden reappearance in my life, the media spun it fast. Blood betrayal, son turned against mother in real estate plot. I called him. No answer. I left a voicemail, then another. Nothing. Days passed. Then came the subpoena. Adam was being sued, not just investigated. Linda had filed a civil case against him personally, dragging him through the mud just as she'd done to me. And this time, it was working. His employer placed him on leave. His apartment was swarmed by reporters. His mental health deteriorated. I sent lawyers, I sent statements, I sent silence. Nothing worked, and I hated it. Because I had started this war, and now someone else was paying the price. In the meantime, I kept working. Publicly. I had to. The foundation grew. Our 5th house opened in Oregon. We held panels, hosted survivors, raised more funds, but each success felt heavier, and every time someone clapped, I heard another door slam shut in Adam's world. I told myself it was temporary, that I could fix it, until I got the file. My attorney slid it across the table. "You're not going to like this," he said. I opened it. Court transcripts, private emails, legal filings, and a name I didn't expect to see, Samantha, my current legal advisor, my PR strategist, my crisis handler. She had been working with Linda the whole time, feeding her timelines, supplying internal documents, coaching her on how to frame the narrative, all under the table. I stared at the paper. My throat dried. "She sold you out," my lawyer said quietly. "For money, mostly, but also because she believes you went too far." I blinked. Samantha had been with me from the start, through the startup days, the lawsuits, the first speech. She had helped shape the Phoenix Haven brand, had pitched my story to national media, had smiled from across every courtroom, and she had used all of it against me. Because in her mind, I had become the villain Linda claimed I was. Final betrayal, final twist, final scar. I thought I'd feel anger, but what I felt was cold, like a lock clicking shut inside my chest. I stood. "Get her out of my life," I told my attorney. "Completely." He nodded. I walked to the window. The skyline blinked below, indifferent. My phone buzzed. Another headline: "Whistleblower from inside Phoenix Haven. Did the founder go too far?" I closed my eyes. Outside, the city glowed. Inside, I was unraveling. But I still had one thing Linda couldn't steal: my name. She could smear it, twist it, drag it through courtrooms and news feeds. But she couldn't make me lie about who I was. I had fought a war. I had won. I had made mistakes. But I had never denied the truth. That was the only power left. And it was mine alone. They wanted me to fire back, to release the screenshots, the private recordings, the depositions, to do interviews, to defend myself loud and proud. But I'd learned something. The more noise you make, the more it echoes in places you didn't intend. Sometimes, silence is the most strategic sound in the room. So I stayed quiet, not passive, quiet. While Linda stirred the public with smear campaigns, while Samantha whispered lies into the ears of every opportunist within reach, I hired a new legal team. Legal, not for revenge, for clarity. I wanted truth, nothing else. And they found it. Emails between Linda and a high-profile attorney, one known for borderline ethics, discussing ways to fabricate coercion, drafts of fake declarations, invoices billed for media training disguised as legal consultations, tampered timestamps on transfer documents, even financial incentives promised to former employees to testify against me. It wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. I gave it all to the DA. No press releases, no leaks, just a clean, quiet handover. 3 weeks later, Linda was arrested at her country club. The mugshot made it online by noon. It went viral by dinner. The same outlets that once called me the daughter-in-law from hell now printed headlines like, "Matriarch manipulator faces fraud charges." I didn't smile, not because she didn't deserve it, but because it didn't matter anymore. This war was over, and I had outgrown the battlefield. What came next wasn't vengeance. It was vision. We restructured Phoenix Haven from a housing foundation into a full-fledged legal advocacy network. We brought in trauma-informed lawyers, built a hotline, offered workshops, created a fund for emergency relocation. One of our first clients was a woman named Jada. She had spent 8 years caring for her husband's mother, raising 3 children and working part-time. The moment she asked for help with bills, her in-laws accused her of financial abuse. They forced her out with nothing but a suitcase and a restraining order. Her story broke something in me, because I knew that pain. I had lived it too. Jada became our first legal victory. We helped her reclaim joint assets, gain custody, and secure housing in less than 60 days. When she hugged me after the hearing, she said, "I didn't think anyone would believe me." I told her, "I built this so no one has to go through it alone again." Months passed, the scandal faded. Samantha tried to file a defamation claim against me, but it collapsed without traction. Mark disappeared into another startup scandal. Linda faced formal indictment and quietly accepted a plea deal to avoid prison time. She was fined, disbarred from social circles, banned from real estate involvement. She became invisible, just like she once tried to make me. And I kept building, kept showing up, kept turning pain into policy. One day, I returned to the original house. the one Linda once ruled like a queen. It was now the administrative headquarters of Phoenix Haven. The family portrait was gone. The living room had been redesigned into an open co-working space. Light poured in through the windows. Voices echoed off clean white walls. I walked into the back room, her old bedroom. The mirror she once cherished was still there, but it had changed. Not cracked, not broken, reframed, polished, restored. It caught my reflection in full for the first time. Not fractured, whole. And in that moment, I realized power was never about control or property or headlines. Power was this: standing in a room once designed to contain me, now reimagined to free others. Power was what you leave behind after the fire dies out. At a press event that fall, someone asked me, "What's the legacy of Phoenix Haven?" I didn't pause. I said, "The woman who was told to stay quiet now speaks for thousands who were never allowed to." The audience clapped. But I wasn't listening for that anymore. I was listening for the quiet ones in the back. The ones still waiting for someone to say, "You're not crazy. You're not alone. You're not powerless." That's why I built this. That's why I survived. So they could too.